Hello, 1517 Podcasts listeners. This is Caleb Keith, director of the 1517 Podcast Network, with a special announcement. Throughout the entire month of June, the Podcast Network at 1517 is hosting a special fundraiser. During the time of this fundraiser, two generous donors are doubling the impact of your generosity by matching dollar for dollar gifts given up to $75,000. The Podcast Network has a goal, including this match, to raise $150,000 during the month of June. These funds will play a crucial role in expanding our network onto additional platforms like YouTube and strategically reaching new audiences with direct marketing and with the creation of new types of content. Your support isn't just figurative. It's a tangible investment in the people and tools necessary to maintain and expand the work of our podcasts. People like the hosts of your favorite shows and the editors and marketing and creative teams behind the scenes that support our podcast throughout the years. Please go to 1517.org/donate-podcast today to help us reach this $150,000 goal. Thank you for being an integral partner of the 1517 Podcast community and for your unwavering dedication to sharing the pure gospel through our shows.
Welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. And while you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that's going on at 1517. Events, articles, academies, all the things. And, of course, we have a donate page over there. You wonder how we can do this work, how 1517 can do so much stuff, how it can all be free. It's because people support it. You can be one of those people. Go over to 1517 or just drop down into the show notes. You can find a link there and you can become a supporter, and we would greatly appreciate that. Chad, last week we got to hear from Elihu. Now, this guy's coming in hot. He's coming in to rebuke Job. He's going to rebuke his friends. He's there to rebuke everybody and tell everyone, all right, I've been listening to this long enough. I'm younger than everyone else here, so I have held my tongue, but no more. It's time for me to tell you guys the truth. And so he went on for a little bit. He's going to keep going on. We ended with him after sort of giving this preface and, being a little bit, extolling his own piety and this kind of thing, of how he waited and listened to all of this ridiculous talk out of respect for his elders. He ended with these humble words. Pay attention, O Job, listen to me, be silent, and I will speak. If you have any words, answer me. Speak, for I desire to justify you. But if not, listen to me. Be silent, and I will teach you wisdom. Yeah, it definitely has the feeling of like
humility. Really.
Yeah, it definitely has the feeling of like, Job, if you've got words, I'll listen to you. But like, just so you know, if you want to be justified, I'm going to tell you.
All you got to do is listen. Listen while I relay to you my wisdom. Yeah, he's going to pick that up in Job 34, where he starts out, hear my words, you wise men. Give ear to me, you who know. So here he seems to direct his attention away from Job, and now he's going to talk to his buddies. He's actually, even though he began with anger against Job and against Job's three friends, now he's gonna tone it down a little bit in this chapter, and he's still gonna be angry at Job, but he's gonna turn his attention more to the three friends. So that's why he starts out, hear my words, you wise men, and give ear to me, you who know. For the ear tests words as the palate tastes food. Now, interestingly, he's quoting Job there, like Job himself. Job said that back in chapter 12, verse 11. He used that same expression about the analogy between just like our palate tastes food, so our ear tastes or test words. So he's quoting, even though he's going after Job, he's quoting Job, probably just a kind of proverbial saying. So listen up, you wise men, and you who know, give ear to these words that I'm going to spoon into your ears. See how they taste. So it moves from there to verse 4. Let us choose what is right. Let us know among ourselves what is good. So let's just kind of take this whole thing into consideration, and let's listen to what Job has to say. And we're going to decide whether he's right or not. And then in verse 5, he's going to summarize, I think at first fairly, and then he's going to summarize unfairly what Job's contentions have been. And then he's going to shift from there to basically kind of a character assassination, where he's going to accuse Job, just like the three friends of Job have done, of being someone who has deserved that which he's suffering. So beginning with verse 5 and then going through verse 9, he says, "For Job has said, I am in the right, and God has taken away my right. In spite of my right, I am counted a liar. My wound is incurable, though I am without transgression. What man is like Job, who drinks up scoffing like water, who travels in company with evildoers and walks with wicked men? For he has said, it profits a man nothing that he should take delight in God." So, verse 5, he claims Job has said, I'm in the right and God has taken away my right. Well, that's probably a fairly accurate summation of many of the things that Job has said. He certainly said that he's in the right in the sense that he's suffering unjustly and that God has not responded to him, that God has taken away his right. But in verse 6, I think he pushes the argument a little bit too far when he says that Job has said, in spite of my right, I am counted a liar. My wound is incurable, though I am without transgression. I don't know that Job ever said, in spite of my right, I am counted a liar, though I am without transgression. That seems to be reading a little bit too much into what Job has said. And then he finishes up in verse 7 and 8 with the same kind of approach that the three friends have taken, which is ironic because, of course, Elihu has claimed that he's going to begin with new arguments no one has used before. He's going to have a novel approach. Well, he's not, because here he's engaging the same kind of accusation against Job that Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar have been doing, where he says that Job is drinking up scoffing, just like he gulps down water. And then verse 8, Job supposedly travels in company with evildoers and walks with wicked men. Where?
Well, you know
exact opposite.
Well, when I read this, I think of, okay, imagine. Well, we've said this before that Job is a type of Christ. Now, like, imagine Jesus standing before Pilate, and these are the sorts of things that maybe he would say. I am in the right, and God has taken away my right. In spite of my right, or in spite of being right? I am counted a liar. My wound is incurable, though I am without transgression. And imagine, like, these are the accusations then that come against Christ. They say, oh, well, I'll tell you what this guy's like. He drinks up scoffing with like water. This guy has done nothing but, like, mock and ridicule us. Imagine the Pharisees are making this argument to Pilate. What does this guy do? He travels in the company of evildoers and walks with wicked men. I mean, he's got the worst company around. We've seen him eating and drinking and hanging out with all kinds of debaucherous folks. For he has said it profits man nothing that he should take delight in God. Now, that is just, like, way over the line, but you could see them making the argument that this guy doesn't care about the words of God. He doesn't care about the Torah. He doesn't care about the law. He said he's doing all kinds of things on the Sabbath. In a lot of ways, like, to me, like, this sounds like the sorts of arguments that would be made against Jesus. That not true, but, like, why could the Pharisees say that he was a blasphemer? Well, because he said, or alluded to, that he was God, right? And they're like, I mean, this guy, he just blasphemed. He says he's righteous, but we know he's a liar. Because we've seen the kinds of people he hangs out with. Because one of the things that's interesting is when Job talks about the righteous things he's done, and then he talks about the sorts of people he's helped, and then we kind of talked about how those sorts of people would be, if you're helping beggars and blind people, the idea would be that these were people that were in that situation for a reason. That reason being that they were great sinners. Job seems to have no problem saying that he was, in fact, associating with such people, that he was always there to help such people. I don't know that like this is totally what's going on, but like seems like Elihu is taking he is taking things maybe like that and saying, Job, I've seen you with wicked people. Everyone knows it. We've seen the kind of associates you have. You say that you're righteous, but you're a liar. We know that that's true. You say that you're in the right, but you're not. All of these things can be said of Jesus, like because they can be said of him by men who perceive themselves to be righteous that don't understand righteousness at all.
Yeah, and these are the kind of accusations that flow out of the same theology that the three friends and Elihu share, that God is a God of retributive justice, and if you're suffering something that's bad, it's because you've done bad,
right?
Or if you're benefiting from a good life, that's because you've engaged in a good life. So reading back into those passages where Job talked about how he'd helped all of these people, even those who were, blind or crippled or widowed or whatever it might have been. Yeah, in their theological system, then those people were getting what they deserved. And so Job, by going out of his way to help these kind of people, was basically complicit in their evil.
I mean, isn't I am in the right? I mean, obviously, I don't know. Did Job say this? I don't know. Did it? Elihu's saying he says this, but let's just imagine he did say it. Job says, "I am in the right, and God has taken away my right." This just sounds like, my God, why have you forsaken me? Like there was no reason to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is a lot of what Job is saying throughout this book. Is like, why have you done this? Like it seems that God has forsaken me without cause.
Yeah, and those of us who are in the know, in the sense that we saw what went on in heaven.
Yeah,
we know. Of course, Job didn't know, is none of these four other guys knew that was exactly right. That's the reason all this began, is because Job was in the right. He was doing the right things. He was more righteous than any of the other people who lived at that time. So yeah, he certainly was in the right. Now we can argue whether God took away that right. There's more to it than that. But Job certainly was in the right. And this approach that Elihu's taking is the typical approach of people who they're impressed with their own righteousness, and when it comes to someone whose theology they oppose, if they can't really think, if they can't come up with a legitimate accusation based in fact, they will simply manufacture an accusation that is going to fit with their theological system, and that's of course what he's done here. Well, Job must be one who drinks up scoffing like water. Job must be one who travels in company with evildoers and walk with wicked men, because that's the only thing that makes sense in this retributive justice theology that they have.
Yeah.
So, basically he just is resorting to character assassination to make sure that his theology is still intact.
Yeah, and sometimes you can do this through like I said, things that are like sort of true, but like you don't understand them. So you can accuse Jesus of like being a terrorist,
drunkard,
or be like, this guy's a terrorist. He said he would destroy the temple and then rebuild it in 3 days. But I don't know what I heard him say, that he would destroy the temple. That seems like a violent threat. You can do that kind of stuff, right? So you could say about Job, like, well, I know is I saw him take a widow into his house, and you know what I think happened there? I'll tell you what I think. I think some suspect behavior was going on. You could do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's reading the worst possible motives into actions which in themselves are righteous.
Yeah. Do you think
the Jesus being accused of being a friend of sinners?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you think the Pharisees didn't think Jesus was a scoffer?
Oh yeah, they definitely did. Yeah. Everything Job's been accused of by his three friends, Jesus himself has been accused of as well. So he's going to pick it. That was through verse 9. He's going to pick it up here with verse 10, saying, "Therefore, hear me, you men of understanding. Far be it from God that he should do wickedness, and from the Almighty that he should do wrong. For according to the work of a man, he will repay him, and according to his ways, he will make it befall him. Of a truth, God will not do wickedly, or the Almighty will not pervert justice. Who gave him charge over the earth, and who laid on him the whole world? If he should set his heart to it, and gather to himself his spirit and his breath, all flesh would perish together, and man would return to dust. Now, if you take verses 10 through 15 that I just read, completely out of the book of Job and just kind of set them aside and read them as unrelated to the entire context of Job. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of truth that's there.
Yeah,
But we've seen this over and
a
over.
psalm.
Yeah,
You'd be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I was reading that, maybe some of you were thinking, wait, well, yeah, I mean, I've heard Bible passages like that. According to the work of a man, he will repay him. According to his ways, he will make it befall him. Yeah, okay. There's Bible verses that say basically that, or even this one, verse 10: far be it from God that he should do wickedness. That particular Hebrew phrase in reference that verb, far be it from, when it's applied to God, it's applied to human beings a lot of other places, but when it's applied to God, only occurs here and back in Genesis 18. And when Abraham is talking with God about the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham says, far be it from you, talking to God, to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked. So, I mean, he's quoting Abraham here, more or less, expressing the same sort of sentiment that Abraham would use. And so, yeah, there's a lot here that is true, as well as the last couple of verses where he more or less says, if God were to, as it were, suck back in all of his life-giving breath from all flesh, then all flesh would perish, because our life comes from God. And so should God in an instant withdraw all of his life or all of his breath, yeah, then all of flesh would perish, would return to dust. I mean, all of that is true. But that's only if you rip it out of this context and set it apart in the context in which it's spoken, of course. This is all this mounting argument against Job, especially the part where he says, according to the work of a man, he will repay him. So, Job, you're just getting your just deserts. God can't do wickedness. God is always going to do that which is right. And what God does that is right is he gives to a person according to their works. Well, you're just getting what you deserve. Case closed. That's his perspective on this.
Yeah, it seems like that these Job, if you're in Job's situation, Job is very confused about what is happening, right? So Job's argument is that this is what's happening to him is he does not understand it, that he hasn't done anything so uniquely wicked that this would befall him. And his friends hear him saying is that God is evil, which is not what he's saying. Like what he's saying is that he doesn't understand what's going on, that God has now confounded him, that God's actions are now a point of frustration for him because he cannot decipher what is happening. And his friends take that as this accusation that God does wickedness, which is not what Job has said. What Job has said is that I don't know what God's doing, but that certainly it must be God.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is crucial to understanding a lot of this. So I mean, there might be a lot of overlap in the theology of Job and his friends, in the sense of it's kind of theological truisms. There's going to be some overlap there. They both hold these things to be true, but the confusion comes on Job's part because what seems to be true does not fit in his situation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's why over and over he protests. That's why he wants his day in court. That's why he wants God to explain himself, because everything that maybe he thought he knew about God is no longer dovetailing with his experience.
Yeah.
And his friends are unable or unwilling to enter into that confused space with him. Instead, they want to hold themselves aloof and just kind of stick with what they think is ancient and true wisdom. But in application to Job's case, it just doesn't work any more than, you know, someone seeing Jesus crucified on the cross would be accurate in saying, well, I guess he's getting his just desserts.
Yeah.
Again, they have no place in their theological system for an innocent sufferer. Everyone gets exactly what they deserve.
And a lot of these arguments that they throw back on Job, like Job will speak, and it seems like they could all sort of be boiled down. You've been in these situations before, where the response is, "So what you're saying is," and then they say all this stuff, right? So it's so Job talks, and they're like, "So what you're saying is God is evil." That's not what he said.
No. Yeah, it makes you wonder if they. This is a classic case, and this always happens, has always happened, and probably always will happen. That when your opponent is talking, you're not really listening to your opponent. You're formulating your next argument.
Yeah.
So they don't really hear what Job is saying, and because of that, their responses to him are always off target, and they don't really. Or I think it's scary too, and maybe this is part of what's going on. It's scary to enter into that realm of confusion. To say I don't know, I don't understand God. I mean, it's much more consoling to have a God that we think that we can understand. Oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on here with God. It's obvious. You can draw a line from A to B. But if you can't draw that line from A to B, if it doesn't make sense, then you're entering into a state of confusion, which is disconcerting disconcerting just experientially when you're going through it. But it's disconcerting theologically too, because it means that you don't have a God who's easily put into your little your cubicles that you have designed for him. He's this, he's this, he's this. So you're dealing with an untamed God, and the friends cannot deal with that, and that's Job has to deal with it because that's his life and experience at this moment.
Yeah.
So he goes on, verse 16. If you, now that you in Hebrew is singular, so this is a direct address to Job, and it's going to be Job that he addresses in these next few verses. So he's talked to Job's friends, he's talked to his the other guys, but now he's going to turn directly to Job. If you, Job, have understanding, hear this. Listen to what I say. Shall one who hates justice govern? Will you condemn him who is righteous and mighty? Who says to a king, worthless one, or to nobles, wicked man? And then going on, it describes these kings and nobles. They show no partiality to princes, nor regard the rich more than the poor, for they are all the work of their hands. And then he finishes off, verse 20. In a moment they die. At midnight the people are shaken and pass away, and the mighty are taken away by no human hand. And what he seems to be doing in this section is, so he's talking about, it's kind of an argument from lesser to greater, or we might say from the earthly to the heavenly. So on earth we have people who are placed into a position of making judgments. They're governing. They're over other people, and they're supposed to maintain whatever the law and order of their realm might be. So we don't want one who hates justice governing. We want someone who is just and right and fair and going to give to each person according to whatever they deserve. So just like you don't say to a king, worthless one, just like you don't say to nobles, wicked men, then you can't turn to God and say that as well. Because if we have people on earth who are actually engaging in just decisions, then certainly we have a God who's engaging in just decisions. In fact, at the end there, he says, in a moment they die, at midnight the people are shaken and pass away, and the mighty are taken away by no human hand. He's saying that, God sometimes inflicts punishment upon people who are wicked. At midnight, they are shaken and pass away, and human judges do the same. And the whole gist of this seems to me to be that God is, as the Almighty Judge, who always does what is right, not only is imitating what is done on earth, but is doing that in a perfect sort of way. Therefore, what's happening to you, Job, is fair and legal and just in the court of God's law.
Yeah, and the argument is that like it has to be right. Like because what's funny is that the Job is he's not condemning God. This is a thing that it just happens in the Psalms and stuff too. If you don't understand, or if you have questions, or if you feel like something is unfair, there's a whole theological system that has not gone away that would say like, well, you can't say that to God. You can't express those things to God. What are you talking about? Like you can't do that. That's part of what his friends don't understand. What Elihu doesn't understand either. So to say to question what God is doing is in their mind to call him unrighteous or unjust or wicked.
Mm-hmm.
These are synonymous, which of course is not true.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about it this way before, but Job's three friends would be very uncomfortable praying the book of Psalms.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, can you imagine looks on their faces when they're praying some of these laments where God is, people cry out to him, "Where are you? And why is this happening? And why are you dealing with us in a way that is not in accord with the covenant that you made with us? You're handing us over to our enemies, although we haven't broken your covenant." I mean, there are plenty of laments where, like in these national laments in the Psalms, the people are saying, "Listen, we didn't do anything wrong," and they're not claiming like they're not saying we're a nation of sinless people. They're just saying, "Hey, we've kept your covenant. We've been doing that which you called us to do, and yet, you're letting all our enemies invade and destroy and engage in all sorts of atrocious behavior." So again, it's like Job, we're confused. Why are you not doing what you said that you would do in the covenant?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, people are still troubled by this, and I think they're mainly troubled by it. Well, for one, because I don't think a lot of people are as knowledgeable of the Psalms as they ought to be, and then secondly, because yeah, it seems to a lot of people kind of I don't know, not irreligious, but what's what I'm looking for. It's like it's not the proper way. It's not according to the proper etiquette of speaking to God to actually be honest in your frustration and your confusion with him.
Well, it feels. I think it has a. People feel like it's faithless.
Yeah, if you really believed, you wouldn't have any issues with this.
Yeah,
right?
and which when the opposite is true, Job is a man, obviously a man of faith, and because he's a man of faith, he doesn't want to just go into any courtroom. He wants to go into God's courtroom. Because that's who he believes can fix this, right? Who can change this, who can give him the answers that could help him understand. That's who he wants to talk to.
Yeah, I think that's worthy of emphasizing what you said, that it's faith which cries out in lament.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not unbelief which cries out in lament. Number one, why would you be crying out to one you don't believe in? And then secondly, the reason that you're able to be honest in prayers like this, and like Job was honest, is because you know that God exists and you know what kind of God you're dealing with. But because because you trust that he is who he is, you know that you can cry out to him in these painful sorts of ways, and that what you're experiencing is inconsistent with the God that you know and believe to be good and merciful and righteous. So faith is at the very essence of lament. It's not unbelief, the lament. It's rather faith that cries out in those sorts of ways.
Yeah, and even if you believe, which you might, that the problem is with you and your lack of understanding, what you're still doing is seeking to have God explain to you what is going on so that you might understand it.
Yeah. So verse 21, he goes on with he's talking about God here, his eyes, and he sees. So Elihu says, for his eyes, that is God's eyes, are on the ways of a man, and he sees all his steps. There is no gloom or deep darkness where evildoers may hide themselves. For God has no need to consider a man further, that he should go before God in judgment. He shatters the mighty without investigation and sets others in their place. Thus, knowing their works, he overturns them in the night, and they are crushed. He strikes them for their wickedness in a place for all to see, because they turned aside from following him and had no regard for any of his ways, so that they caused the cry of the poor to come to him, and he heard the cry of the wicked. When he is quiet, who can condemn? When he hides his face, who can behold him? Whether it be a nation or a man. And then verse 30 kind of picks up the idea that we dropped off at the end of verse 28 about hearing the cry of the afflicted. So he hears this and he comes to their aid, that a godless man should not reign and that he should not ensnare the people. Again, well, there's plenty of things here that are true. I mean, of course, his eyes are on the ways of man. He sees all his steps, and it's not like you can, find some secret place, make a room in your house where the walls are so thick that God can't see through those, or hide in some deep, dark cave, and you're going to be able to do whatever you want there because God can't see there. It's Psalm 139, right? Where can I go? If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I ascend to the far side of the sea, you're there. Even the darkness is not dark to you. Yeah, I mean, all of these are kind of theological truisms. But he goes on to talk to relate that to how God renders judgment. So God just knows, right? He doesn't have to investigate. He shatters the mighty without investigation. He knows their works. He overturns them in the night, and he will strike them for their wickedness. And some of that wickedness is described in terms of the pain they inflicted on the poor. So the poor come to God, and he hears the cry of the afflicted, and because of that, he acts on their behalf. Now, again, a lot of this is true, but I don't really understand how this applies to Job, except in the sense that he is expanding his argument, saying, "Listen, Job, whatever you did in that gloom and deep darkness where you tried to hide yourself, well, God knew that, and he doesn't have to investigate your behavior. He simply knows it, and because of that, just like he overturns kings and rulers from their thrones, so he's overturned you." And there's nothing that you can say, not like you can take God to court and ask him to explain his actions to you.
I just feel like Elihu's really failing on this. I'm going to bring some new arguments.
Yeah.
Like
He totally failed in this. Yeah, this is he claimed up front, listen, you guys, you were not able to answer Job. So just sit back and be quiet and let me take over, because I've got got some new rhetorical weapons that I'm going to use.
Yeah, and then he says, let me use 250 words to say God sees everything.
Yeah. I mean, he does love his words.
I mean, it's like, yeah, sure, but like Job has already responded to this. He's like, yeah, all right. But this does not address my argument of like I didn't do anything in the deep shadows of the darkness. Like it's like, well, well, God sees if you did. Yeah, but I didn't.
Yeah. Again, they're talking past each other. I don't know if maybe Job listened well to his friends, but his friends certainly did not listen well to Job.
No. Yeah, I don't. It's one of those. Yeah, this is one of those sections that you're just like, okay. There might be a lot of truth in that. It just doesn't apply to Job's argument at all.
No. So verse 31, we'll see where he goes from here. For has anyone said to God, I have borne punishment, I will not offend any more. Teach me what I do not see. If I have done iniquity, I will do it no more. Will he then make repayment to suit you because you reject it? This verse is confusing, by the way. This is verse 33. Will he then make repayment to suit you because you reject it? For you must choose, and not I. Therefore, declare what you know. Men of understanding will say to me, and the wise man who hears me will say, Job speaks without knowledge. His words are without insight. Would that Job were tried to the end, because he answers like wicked men. For he adds rebellion to his sin. He claps his hands among us and multiplies his words against God. So he starts out in verse 31 saying that if anybody says to God, I've been punishment, I've been punished, I won't offend anymore. In fact, if I don't realize what I've done, then teach me what I don't see, and I won't do it anymore. Which seems to be Elihu calling Job to repentance. At least that's what I'm making of this. Verse 33, though, that follows that is where things get a little bit murky. And I was reading in a commentary this morning that he said verse 33 is one of the more enigmatic verses in the entire book of Job. So there you go. If it's a little confusing to everybody else, but verse 33, to read it again, says, will he then make repayment to suit you because you reject it? For you must choose and not I. Therefore declare what you know. It seems to be what he's suggesting here is that even if Job should repent, then he doesn't know that what God gives to Job is going to suit him. And that Job must at this point choose whether or not he's going to simply acknowledge that God is just and to get on with his life. I don't know. That's the best that I can make of these verses. You have anything that
Well, it kind of seems like he's saying that this is not something that anyone does. Like, right? So he says, "For has anyone said to God, I'm getting punished here. If you just teach me what it is that I did, I just won't do that anymore." It seems that he's saying, yeah, that's not how it works. Like you have to figure out what you have done, man. Like you can't go around just saying I haven't done anything. Oh, if God would just tell me what it is. That's not how this thing works. And that's why he says that. I think that's why he says later that Job speaks without knowledge and his words are without insight. Would that Job were tried to the end because he answers like a wicked man. Like it's wicked people that say I haven't done anything. It's wicked people that would say, I mean, I'm getting punished, but I have no idea what I did wrong. That's not. It doesn't seem that he's. It might be wrong here, but it doesn't seem that he's saying that he's recommending Job do this to God, but more is saying that this is what Job is doing. Like he's saying, hey, I'm bearing a punishment. If God would just teach me what I don't see, I'm more than happy to stop doing anything, like whatever it is. Like I'm more than happy. He's like, that's not how it works. Like, has anyone ever done that? No one. People don't do that. That's the only people that say things like that are wicked people that maybe are so sinful that they don't even understand what sin is. Job, like you must be, like you can't think of it. That also speaks to your profound wickedness.
Yeah, I like it. I think that that does make sense of those verses. So, yeah, he's imputing lies to Job, more or less. Yeah, if you were to say this, Job, then you would be lying because basically you know what you've done, even though you claim to have done nothing which deserves the punishment that you are now receiving.
It almost is like if you can't think of it, that actually is an indictment against you. Like you must be so like entrenched in wickedness that you don't even all you've got is wickedness. So you couldn't figure out like as you audited your deeds. Where's the wicked one? They must just all be wicked. They must all be the same because none of them stand out. You don't have one. You're like obviously it's this one. I mean these ones are good, and there was this one thing over here. This is not good. So obviously that's it. And yeah, then he says, look, he's adding rebellion to his sin. So like not only is he a sinner, but now he's being rebellious to God and saying that he's not.
Yeah, that's like it's. Wickedness has become so much the water that Job swims in that he no longer even is aware of the fact that he's engaging in evil behavior. Yeah, and so the rebellion here, which is how the chapter ends, for he adds rebellion to his sin. Yeah, he's got plenty of sin, but now he's making it even worse. He's doubling down because he's saying, I'm unaware of anything that I've done wrong when all he's done is, in fact, wrong.
Yeah, this is
And then
he's multiplied his words against God. Right? It's like every word that Job's spoken is just like multiplied his sin against God, because the one thing that he's supposed to say, which is the great confession of whatever it is that makes Job so evil, is the thing he won't say.
Yeah. Yeah. And the image of he claps his hands among us is, I found a few of the spots in the Old Testament where clapping hands is kind of not in jest, but in like mockery, which would fit here.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have what the equivalent modern expression would be besides maybe an uplifted finger. But it's the idea of mockery against God, clapping your hands among us, and then multiplying his words against God by, doing the same thing that Job did throughout the entire book, lament and cry out to God to give him a day when he could have his day in court.
Or maybe after one of these arguments, Job literally just was like, that was great. That was great. Really good argument, guys.
That's possible too. The slow clap. Great. Yeah.
I understand.
Awesome response there.
I understand now. Because it does seem that what he's implying is like, because Job has been, some of his responses have certainly included him making fun.
He's been sarcastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that it seems that is what is being referred to here, is that, like, listen, like, these people are here saying these words to you and you're not taking any of them seriously.
Job's sarcasm is some of my favorite parts of the book.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, you take a guy who's suffering everything that he has, and if he still has the ability to be humorlessly sarcastic, hey, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and man. We're out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time.
Well, you might wish that Elihu was done, but he's not. He's got more to say. He's coming at it with the next chapter again, and so we're going to continue with him in the next episode. Chad, I'll see you then.
Hello, 1517 podcast listeners. This is Chad Bird, co-host of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament, with an announcement from the 1517 Podcast Network. Throughout the entire month of June, the Podcast Network at 1517 is launching a special fundraiser, and I need your help. Every dollar you contribute will be matched by 2 generous donors, doubling the impact of your generosity. The Podcast Network needs to raise $150,000 in an effort to support the ongoing creation and expansion of our shows. The funds raised will play a crucial role in expanding our network onto additional platforms, such as YouTube, and strategically reaching new audiences with the gospel. Your support isn't just a figurative donation. It's a tangible investment in the people and tools necessary to maintain and expand the work of our podcast. Please help us to reach our $150,000 goal. Simply visit www.1517.org/donate-podcast today. Thank you for being an integral partner of the 1517 podcast community and for your unwavering dedication to sharing the pure gospel through our shows.